Hi guys, welcome back to another video for PSO2 NGS. I know it's been a little while since the last video. I've been on holiday for the last couple of weeks and I've just got back recently, so just starting to catch up with the video backlog again. So what I want to cover today is the recent NGS headline covered a lot of the December information that we're getting for the game, and as expected there is some tie-ins with the 25th anniversary of PSO as well. So what I want to do is kind of go through that. So anyone who was a PSO player back in the day, just to let you know what you'll be able to get in NGS during this anniversary. And for people who haven't played PSO, I kind of want to cover some of the stuff and let you know how important some of it is. So the winter update has been called Omniscience Beyond Genesis, obviously because it's also bringing us the Dark Falls Luther fight from PSO2. Also got this really nice key art as well of NGS Rupika with these new rappies. These rappies actually threw us all for a loop. When they showed the silhouette for these rappies, I was convinced they were PSO1 rag rappies. A lot of people online said that they were PSO2 nav rappies. It turns out they're actually neither. They're actually a new type of rappy called raguo rappies, which are, as the dev team described, they are basically a mixture of the PSO1 and PSO2 rappies that sort of combined together. So those will be appearing in the field during the event. So the impression I get is that these will replace the regular rappies. There's also a quest where I fight a massive one as well, which looks really funny. So there's a few things to cover in this, but I'm only going to really cover the things that are relating to PSO1. So I will very quickly just cover this though. There will be a AC Scratch Rewind collection. There is a scratch count bonus for this item called Skier Strain. This isn't a PSO1 weapon, but it is from, I believe it was from PSP2 originally. So if you are a PSP2 fan, just be aware that that is the scratch count bonus for this scratch. So next up, we've got a few things. So there is a Super SG free scratch. One of the items you can get in this, as you can probably just about see here, is a camo for Lavis Cannon. Lavis Cannon, a lot of PSO2 players were very familiar with it because it was an extremely good wand in PSO2. But it obviously originated in PSO1, where it was one of the rarest sabers in the game. A very, very hard weapon to find in PSO, so I'm really happy to see this coming back. Kind of a shame it's only weapon camo, but I'm happy to see it back in some description. Next up, we'll get onto the 14-star weapons in a minute, because you know, there's quite a lot of PSO stuff in that. Next thing we'll cover is the Super Treasure Scratch. The scratch count bonus for this is a camo for Spread Needle, which was a weapon from PSO. So in PSO, Spread Needle was a rifle that would get like shooting a spread. It would have quite short range, but it would shoot in kind of a spread pattern instead. Really, really decent gun. It's kind of a staple range weapon in PSO. The only downside with this is they have confirmed that the Spread Needle camo will be PSO2 spec, so it won't look as good as some of the others, which is a bit of a shame. I think they could have updated it to NGS spec, but they didn't. So next PSO stuff. These are the raguo rappies and the raguo Great Rappy. So you can see that they do look different from the PSO1 rag rappies. To me, they did look far more similar to the PSO2 nav rappies, but they do have a bit of a belly on them, so that's a bit more reminiscent of the PSO1 rappies that are a bit more a bit more portly. So next up, there is a Super Genesis Festival SP scratch. This will have some more camos in it as well. So here it shows the Yasminkov 7000V camo, which is from PSO. It did also show on the headline that there's also going to be the camos for the Yasminkov 9000M, which is the mech guns. And there was another one, I think it was the Yasminkov rocket launcher that appeared in, I think it was in PSP2. So yeah, and there you go. There is the Super SG scratch, so you can get some nice PSO stuff. You can get the key art. This key art has been revealed since that this is actually going to be the cover for the P-Spec Volume 7 magazine. So this will be released at the Arche's caravan that's coming out soon. So unfortunately, I won't be able to get this one. I might have to look out for it on eBay, try and pick up a copy because I have every other issue of P-Spec now. But yeah, this is going to be the cover for the new P-Spec magazine. But you can see there is a camo for Lavis Cannon. And I believe this is going to be NGS spec. So next thing I want to cover, apologies for the slightly grainy image, this is just blown up from the NGS website. But there will be a new weapon series, which is going to coincide with the Dark Falls Luther emergency quest. and these are the 14-star Arche series of weapons. Now, the Arche series of weapons are all based on old PSO weapons. They have confirmed the potentials is going to be to do with your PP. So the impression I got is that I think as you use more PP, you will get more bonuses or something. I don't know the specifics of it, but unfortunately, it looks like the really unique stuff that some of these weapons did isn't going to be in NGS. Maybe they'll surprise us, but we'll see. I will cut in some footage of some of these weapons from PSO as well as I go through, just so you can see what they're like. Now, they've only shown some of the weapons so far. I fully believe there will be a weapon for every weapon type, because that's normally how NGS works. Typically, these weapon series will give you one of every single weapon type. Obviously, with exceptions being the really early weapon series that launched before some of the newer classes. But I have no reason to believe that they'll miss out certain character classes for this. I'm pretty sure there's going to be one for every weapon type. In the trailer, they only showed us a few. So these weapons, if you're not familiar with PSO1, first of all, we've got the twin daggers. These twin daggers are a weapon called Zero Divide. This was a weapon that was introduced in PSO Blueburst. Honestly, this is a really weird choice for daggers. There are so many other daggers in PSO I would have picked over this. It's a very weird one because it's a weapon that wasn't really used much in PSO. It's not really a particularly good weapon in PSO. It's a very, very strange choice. I mean, it's cool to see it come back, but I probably would have picked a different weapon. Next one is probably one of the most iconic weapons in PSO, which is the sword, which is Darkflow. Darkflow is the sword that Olga Flow uses when you fight it in episode 2 in PSO. And it's basically a D-cell corrupted sword. Now, Darkflow had a really cool ability in PSO 1, which was when you were on really, really low HP. It was around 12.5% HP, I believe. If you did a special attack, it would fire a huge energy shockwave. I'll try and cut in some footage of that so you can see it. Made it a very, very strong weapon. Interestingly, it is quite a strange choice because Darkflow was never actually really available for most players. I want to say maybe they activated the drop for it on Japanese Blueburst at some point, but I could be wrong on that. But certainly on the globe, on the western side, we never had legitimate access to Darkflow. It never dropped because the drops were disabled for Olga Flow. Same for Darkfalls as well. There was never any red ring drops either. So it's kind of interesting to see this as a weapon. Obviously, with the existence of things like private servers, now you can usually get it. Really, really cool weapon. I'm really glad to see it come back. Next, we have the rod, which is Dark Bridge. Now, Dark Bridge, there was an item in PSO called Parasitic Gene Flow, which you could use to transmute certain common weapons into special weapons. If you did it on a sword, it would turn into Dark Flow. If you did it on a rod, it would turn into Dark Bridge. And there was also a shot called Dark Meteor as well, which we'll get onto. The Dark Bridge is really cool. I can't remember from the footage from the trailer if it moves around, but in PSO, the kind of claw bit on the end would kind of ride around as if it was alive. Again, it was not a weapon anyone really used on the western side because there was no way of legitimately getting it. Very cool weapon though. Next up, they showed the bow. So this is an interesting one because obviously there were no bows in PSO 1. So what they've done is what it appears they've done is they've basically taken the Dark Meteor shot and taken the aesthetics of that and made it look like a bow, which is a really cool idea. It wouldn't surprise me if we do still get Dark Meteor as the launcher, but it's cool to see them do this to include weapon types that weren't in PSO originally. Next up, this one kind of threw me off because these weapons here are called Heart of Poom, and in PSO these were a claw weapon. I believe there've been a few different weapon types over certain games, but yeah, in PSO these were a claw. In PSO2 NGS, they are a jet boot. But honestly, I think it's a really, really good use of them because the way that these are designed, you can't tell with how they're sheathed here, but they're basically like a kind of van brace with two big spikes on the front. But then you would also have a big foot or an NG blade that would come out of the back of them. Again, I'll try and cut in some footage of Heart of Poom from PSO so you can see it. So by putting these as jet boots, you have the spikes on the front of the boot, but then you also have the photon blades on the back, so they actually work really well with the jet boot moveset. So I think that's a really clever choice by SEGA to do that. Would I have liked them as a claw? Yeah, but obviously in NGS we don't have a claw weapon type as such. Claws tend to be used as wired lances instead. So I actually think this is a better use of Heart of Plume. And then finally they showed the rifle, which is the Heaven Striker. Now Heaven Striker wasn't a rifle in PSO, it was a handgun, but it was a handgun with rifle range, so... Heaven Striker is a very, very important weapon in the plot of PSO Episode 4 in Blueburst, and is one of the most overpowered weapons in the game in PSO. It does also have a really cool ability when you use it with a specific mag, in that it would get an ability called Divine Punishment, which would drop huge laser beams on all the enemies. Again, I'll show some footage of that for you. I don't expect Heaven Striker to have that in NGS, partly because in PSO you required the mag to be able to do that, but also because I just don't really feel like these really unique abilities are going to translate over to NGS, unfortunately. It would be really cool if Darkflow has, even if it's just like a visual effect, say for example, once its potential was fully powered up, if it did the energy waves, even if it didn't actually hit enemies, if it was just a visual effect, that would be cool. I'm not holding out a whole lot of hope, but it would be cool to have those little cool visual effects. So those are the only ones I've shown so far. Now, again, I think there will be an Arche weapon for every single weapon type, so I've been having to think about what weapons could potentially be used as Arche weapons. So if we start off with Hunter, so obviously for Solid we know is going to be Darkflow. Partisan, I was thinking, the way I've looked at this is, all of these weapons, as far as I'm aware, I could be wrong on this, but as far as I'm aware, I don't think any of these weapons that they've picked so far have a weapon camo. So I'm trying to avoid weapons that we already have a weapon camo for. So for Partisan, I don't know if we have a weapon camo for Soul Eater. I know we have one for Soul Banish, which looks very, very similar. But we could potentially go Soul Eater for Partisan. Again, that is a very, very important weapon in the sort of side stories with Kirik's story in PSO. So it would be cool to see the Soul Eater come back. But the only other weapon I think of for Partisan that they might pick is maybe something like Yunchang from Blueburst. So that's Partisan. For Wildlands, the theory I'm going on here is, for the Wildlands camos, we already have a camo for Twin Foul Claws or Twin Reaper's Claw, whichever nomenclature you want to use. So it's quite apparent that for Wildlancers, quite often they will use claw weapons to fill in Wildlands. We could potentially go with Naze Claw. We've already had the Naze Claw RF camo, which I think is meant to represent the claw from Phantasy Star 2, but the PSO design is totally different. So I think Naze Claw has a real chance of being the Wildlance. If we then move on to Fighter, we've already got Zero Divide for the daggers. For Double Saber is a really tough one because we've already got a camo for Double Cannon, I believe. We've already got a camo for Monkey King Bar. We could potentially go with Black King Bar, but that is literally just a recolouring of Monkey King Bar. I don't know if that's necessarily the way to go. We've already got a camo for Meteor Cudgel. There's not many other good Double Sabers in PSO. The only one I can really think of is, you could maybe go with Girasol, but I don't know if that has a camo already. Or Demolition Comet, maybe. Double Saber I'm a little bit up in the air on. And then Knuckles, obviously fist weapons in PSO are very, very different. We already have a God Hand camo, which is for some reason called Divine Fists in NGS. What I was thinking though is, because of the knuckle animation, it could suit certain dagger weapons from PSO, and the dagger that isn't included in any of this is Daylight Scar. Again, I don't know if we have a Daylight Scar camo already, but I feel like Daylight Scar could work really well as the knuckle weapon. Daylight Scar was a dagger from Blueburst that was ridiculously overpowered, but really, really strong. Like, really, really good weapon. It's kind of like these van braces that you wear with huge blades all over them. It's a really cool looking weapon, and I feel like it would probably suit the knuckle moveset. So if we then move on to Ranger, obviously we know the rifle is Heaven Striker. For Launcher, the obvious one to go for Launcher would be Dark Meteor. Now yes, we've already got this ball that kind of resembles Dark Meteor. I just can't see them not picking Dark Meteor for the Launcher. It seems like a really odd choice not to. We've already got Dark Flow, we've got Dark Bridge. There were 3 weapons in this series and Dark Meteor was the 3rd one. So unless they're using the bow as the proxy for that, I think there's a reasonably good chance that we're going to get Dark Meteor as the Launcher. Onto Gunner. Gunner is an interesting one. So for twin machine guns, we've got a couple of options. We could go with something like Milmator. Milmator was a combination of Heaven Punisher and Orphelices. They're really, really compact little guns. They would look really cool as a twin machine gun in NGS. Other option is something like Dual Bird. So I'll show you a picture of this actually because it's a really cool looking weapon. So Dual Bird is a pair of handguns that are totally different to each other. So it consists of Master Raven, which is this black one, and Last One, which is the white one. They were a really, really strong twin machine gun mech gun in PSO. And I think it'd be really cool to see these come back. I think I'd probably prefer these over Milmator, honestly. But I think either Milmator or Dual Bird could work. We've already got a camo for Gold Miller. We've already got a camo for Yaz 9K. So I think Dual Bird is a good choice. So next, if we move on to Katana. Katana is another interesting one because a lot of the popular katanas from PSO we've already got as weapon camos. So we've already got the Orochi Agito, we've already got Yasha, we've just got Sanga as a login bonus. We've already got Yamigarasu. About the only ones I can think of that could go with realistically would be either Raikiri or either Guren or Shoren. I would personally like to see Shoren. So Shoren was a really cool looking katana with this like blue blade. And this was part of a twin sword that you can make called Jizai. So I'd really like to see Shoren come back. Guren is also pretty cool. So Guren is like a red one. So either of those I'd be happy to see come back. The only other option I can think of really outside of those is maybe Kamui. But I feel Kamui would be a little bit underwhelming. So I think there's a reasonable chance it could be Guren or Shoren for the katana. If we then move on to dual blades, I would personally, obviously, if anyone knows the channel, I would love to see Sanga and Yasha. We've already got Sanga and Yasha individually. And yes, if you're a PSO2 player and you're looking at this, yes, this is not Sanga and Yasha. There is a mistake in the model in PSO, PSU that didn't get fixed until PSO2, where the model for Sanga and Yasha uses Kamui and Yasha instead. So this sword here is actually Kamui. So ignore that. It shouldn't really look like that, but that's how it looks in PSO. They made a mistake with the model. I would love to see Sanga and Yasha come back. It's probably my favourite weapon in PSO. It's one of the very few, very rare things I actually managed to get in PSO back on the live service. So I'd love to see this come back. The other option is Jizai. Obviously, if we're getting either Guren or Shoren as a katana, then Jizai as the twin sword would make sense. Jizai is this twin sword. So it combines Guren and Shoren together. A very, very cool weapon. I'd prefer to see Sanga and Yasha myself, but I would be happy with Jizai. Now after this, it becomes very difficult because after this, we get to other classes. So for example, for Force, for example. For Force, we've already got the Dark Bridge as the rod. Talus is an interesting one because there's not that many options. Cards weren't really used that much in PSO, honestly. They're really, for the most part, not very good. We could go maybe with something like Hitagata, but again, I don't know if some of these have camos already. So I'm a little up in the air on that one. If we then move on to Tector, for wands, obviously we're getting Lavis Cannon as a camo, so we can kind of discount that. The main ones I can think of for wand would maybe be something like potentially Evil Cursed. That would be a good shout. Or if you wanted to go down the Saber route, you could go with something like Excalibur. So there is a couple of options for wand. I think it's kind of a shame that we're probably not getting Lavis Cannon. Unless they do throws a curveball and put Lavis Cannon in as the actual weapon as well, but I find it a little unlikely. So that's Tector. After this, it gets very, very difficult because then we get on to Waker and Slayer. So obviously, Waker uses a Harmonizer. The only thing I can think of in PSO that is remotely similar to a Harmonizer would be a card. But I really don't know what you pick to use as a Harmonizer. It's a really, really hard choice because the class is so far removed from anything that was in PSO. I mean, maybe you go with Hitagata for a Harmonizer. I really don't know. It's a really tough choice. I mean, obviously they could throw as the meta choice and go with a literal Talus for Talus. So for those who don't know, Talus in PSO2 is obviously the weapon type, but the name originates from a certain specific weapon in PSO. So in PSO, the Talus weapons were not called Talus, they were called cards. And then there was a special weapon Talus, or a special weapon card called Talus, just to confuse you. So they could potentially use the PSO1 Talus as the NGS Talus. So that's one option. Then you could do something like Hitagata for the Harmonizer, maybe. Then we get to Slayer with Gunblade. Now Gunblade, obviously there was no Gunblade in PSO. So we don't have many options for this. You basically need a weapon that would work well as a melee weapon and also work well as a ranged weapon. Off the top of my head, the only thing I can think of that would kind of work is maybe something like Kunai. So Kunai was a throwing knife in PSO Blue Burst. Obviously it was a ranged weapon in, I think it was it treated as a card or a slicer in PSO? So obviously you could use that for the ranged, but because it's a throwing knife, I guess you could also use it as melee as well. But again, there's not that many options for this, unless they massively repurpose another PSO weapon. You know, kind of how they've done with Bow here for Dark Meteor. They've taken Dark Meteor and kind of applied the aesthetic of it to a bow. Maybe they do something similar. Maybe we just get like a Dark Meteor looking Gunblade. You know, it's an option. But yeah, really cool to see these come back. I'm really, really happy to see some PSO 1 weapons that are actually weapons. And I wish NGS would do this a bit more. I like it when we get these weapon series where every weapon is completely different. Even though they're all part of the same series and they might all have the same potential, at least they all look very different. And I'd love them to do this more often. You know, it is the 20th anniversary of PSU next year, so maybe we'll get a PSU one next year. So yeah, really happy about those. Yeah, so that's probably going to do it for this video, I think. I just basically wanted to show off the PSO 1 stuff that is coming to NGS, and for those who maybe didn't play PSO 1 back in the day, because I realise a lot of people who play NGS were probably not even born when PSO released, which is very scary. I just kind of wanted to show what these weapons were in PSO. Again, throughout this video there will have been cut-ins to PSO footage that shows you these weapons from the original game they were in, just to get an idea of what the weapons actually are and how they acted. If you've got any suggestions for what the other weapons might be, leave them in the comments below. I'm interested to hear you guys' opinions on this. I've just kind of picked weapons that I don't think have weapon camos. Again, I could be wrong on some of this. I'm not familiar with every single camo that's in the game, but I'm trying to pick weapons that don't have weapon camos already, that are still kind of popular enough or well known enough to justify being the 14-star weapon, which makes Zero Divide's inclusion such a weird choice. I still don't know why I picked that, but here we are. So yeah, if you've got any questions or any comments or anything, leave them below. I'll try and answer what I can. We are going to be getting back to the regular schedule now, so hopefully back to 2 streams a week. And I'm going to try and do a video most weeks. I'm not going to commit to doing a video every single week, just when I get the inspiration to do it. There will also be a special video coming out towards the end of December, which will be to celebrate the PSO 25th anniversary as well, so keep an eye out for that. That is probably going to launch around December the 20th, 21st to coincide with the PSO 25th anniversary in Japan. So as a result of that, I will also be announcing the winner of the survey that I did for the 25th anniversary. So if you entered that competition and agreed to enter the prize draw, I will be announcing that as well once that video goes live. The prize for that, I have announced it already, but the prize for that is a copy of the Phantasy Star Online 2 Episode 6 Materials Collection book, which is all in Japanese, but should be some really good concept art and everything in there. So I will announce that as the video goes live late December, and that will probably be shipped around January 2026. So yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed the video. Good to be back to making videos again, and hopefully see you guys in some of the streams. Whatever you're doing, have a good day, and I'll see you next time. you.